Welcome to Two Mothers, One Ashe, a grief dialogue. I'm Dionne.
And I'm Yvette. We're mothers, friends, and sisters in grief.
I lost my daughter Siwe at 15 years old.
And I lost my son, Dasan, at 26.
This podcast is our space to talk about grief, how it shapes us, how it lingers, and how love carries us through. Welcome to the conversation.
I'm trying to look. Hey girl, hey, but I was trying to clean my glasses. Look at me getting caught out there without my glasses on. Here we go. I'm ready.
And you look popping collars. Wait, let me pop my
collar. Let's pop a collar. Okay. Let's pop a collar. Because you know what, boo? We podcasters.
We are.
I'm feeling myself. I'm good, sis. Thank God I walk with the blessing of the ancestors. I feel that road for myself. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm locked in and I'm grounded with my purpose, which comes from the highest source possible.
Yes.
And, although we are tested, are we not tested quite often? But for me, what works is being rooted in my faith, and I try my best to stay in my gratitude practice so that way I conjure up a smile at least once a day.
Ashe. I'm in full agreement with you. And until we started this podcast, I did not realize how much I say Ashe. But I'm like,
I love that.
Every other sentence. But I feel the same way, deeply rooted in gratitude, deeply aware of my blessings. And when I want to feel forlorn, and that does happen when we are being tested, I also come back to faith, spirituality, and gratitude. That even if I'm feeling a way about XYZ, I'm deeply grounded in my gratitude for ABC. So yeah, I'm in agreement.
Amen. Ashe. So shall it be.
And so shall it be.
And so shall it be. So, sis, what are we talking about today?
Today, and it's funny, again, we naturally lead into these topics without reviewing, but today we're talking about love, faith, and spirituality with grief. Because we can have it, and sometimes the relationship changes when we are tested and when grief shows up. Because grief is going to show up uninvited.
Tell me about it. And well, I'm very excited about this topic. These are all subjects that I love talking about. Love, faith, and spirituality in grief. My name is Yvette Love Davila. I'm the co-host of Two Mothers and One Ashe.
My name is Dionne C. Monsanto, and I'm the co-host of Two Mothers, One Ashe. I felt like I could have popped my collar with that. But
you should have. So let's get into it, sis.
I want us to breathe, and especially I really want us to breathe because literally before we recorded this particular podcast, I got some news that took my breath away, and I had to make a couple of phone calls to ground myself. And I'll share that with our listeners as well, because life is happening in real time while we're doing these things. Yeah. So before I share that story, I'm going to ask you to breathe with us. When we're in uncomfortable situations, we are activating here and showing you as a tool, a guide, and a practice that when we stop, drop into a seat, or stand and breathe, we can reclaim our power and connect to ourselves. So I love putting a hand on my heart and on my belly, and we're just going to take 3 breaths. You ready, Evie?
I am ready, sis. Let's go.
Okay. Take a deep breath in and out. 2 more times. Inhale. Exhale. 1 last time. Pull air in. Hold it in. And then a gentle sigh out. Oh my goodness. Those 3 breaths feel like magic every time.
Every time. And for those that are just tuning in, maybe they didn't catch our first few episodes, breathing, breath work, it scientifically is proven it regulates the nervous system. And one of the first things that grief attacks is your nervous system.
Period.
And so, not only are we discussing these really, really hard topics, we're providing you tools every day to get through it. At our kitchen table, in our community, just want you to come in. Our arms are open. We love you. And, I want to do this deep dive. This is such an amazing topic. Grief often sends us searching.
Yeah.
My God, did I search? I searched high and low for meaning, for connection, for something bigger than me. I was searching for Dasan. Like I was searching. And I got to tell you, Dionne, I was given the answers that I needed.
Nice. How long did you think that took for you? Was that in the first year, 2 years?
Well, I'm still getting
Yes.
messages.
I just wanted to make sure. I agree that it's a journey, but
But I tell you, I have a really short story. So I remember coming to Chris about a month or two after Dasan's transition. And I said, is it weird that I haven't felt anger? At least I don't recognize the anger. And Chris, without hesitation, answered me. I mean, no thought, just like quick reaction, and said, well, that's because you are steeped in faith. And I felt validated. I felt seen. I felt a lot of things in that moment.
Yeah.
But I felt heard by God.
Ashe.
Because going into those 8 days in the hospital, right? Going into, while I was in anticipatory grief, while I was going through all the things that we're going to discuss today, I never once questioned God. Like, why, right? I didn't get angry. I didn't react in that way. And then I want to say probably day 3 into Dasan's hospital stay, I get a video message from Pastor John Gray, he's down in South Carolina, and he part of his congregation is also in Atlanta. He does a lot of work in Atlanta. Pastor John Gray sent me a message and said, do not be moved. Stay firm in your faith.
I love that it was a video message too, because sometimes reading something as opposed to seeing it pulls you in a different way.
That's right.
Because reading something can still take you into yourself, but video, TV, those sort of things pull you out of yourself. So I love that.
And I don't know if I've ever even explained to him how I still go back to that video in my moments of doubt.
I'm really curious for our listeners. Well, I can share a point of faith for myself because my daughter and I had different belief systems and faith, but, and there were various things in life where she was angry before she died and had lost faith, but I didn't, but had her respect about her homegoing ceremony. But the moment, my story is at the interment, because we had so many conversations about death, I knew she wanted to be cremated. So she was cremated. And oh, wow. And so during the interment, it wasn't a pastor, whoever from the funeral home was there reading whatever poem, prayer that she was reading. My eyes were closed and I heard this gasp. So I opened my eyes and I was like, what happened? And my mother was pointing and she said, a butterfly just flew by your face. Literally, it could have grazed me as it flew by. And I was like, oh, thank you, Siwe. And butterflies have definitely been a point of transformation, faith, community. And I would love to invite our listeners, as they listen to us, to think about a faith practice. We lit a candle in the last one. And this, while it's an entire episode, if there are particular scriptures that ground you, some you may have the daily word, and sometimes there's a particular scripture that lands in your body. For my grandmother, it was always the Lord's Prayer, you know. And that's something she would fall into. And when I feel like that's what lands in my body when I'm thinking of my grandmother. But that's what we're going to talk about today. The complex ways that faith and spirituality hold us, challenge us, and transform grief.
Yeah. I got to tell you, I fall on the 23rd Psalm a lot. I find myself reading the 23rd Psalm. For those of you, that aren't familiar, it
The
starts,
Lord is
"The
my
Lord is my
shepherd.
shepherd, I shall not want," right? And it really talks about
He
those
maketh me.
moments. That's right.
Mhm.
It really talks about in those dark moments when you're alone, who is there with you? Are you truly
Yeah.
alone? Do you open
And
yourself up to, to that spirit, to that force, to that energy, to um the energy of God in whatever name God carries for you?
And what's funny is, as you're saying it, I'm hearing it in my head and I'm hearing my grandmother's voice. But something that I'd never thought about, as much as I lean into nature, and listeners, I'm like, I'm not going, we are not these Bible peddling folks. Like, the Bible is one of the many books and tools and scriptures. But that part, he maketh me to lie down in green pastures, because my brain is going, I could lie down in a green pasture on the grass, be barefoot in the snow, and ground myself in ways that I'm like, ooh, snow, grass, nature. And nature is a tool for us.
Mhm,
And there's so many subtleties in the good book that
mhm,
let us know that nature, everything above, the sky, the sun, the grass, the green pastures, is there for us as a tool. And I don't think I ever heard that until you were talking, and I'm seeing and hearing the scripture in my head, because anybody, especially Black and brown growing up, from the Caribbean, there are some
mhm.
scriptures you just know.
You just know. And as you were describing that, which, thank you, that's such a beautiful memory, right? And even connection. I made a connection of my own where, in new age spirituality, new age religion, we call that grounding. But in the 23rd Psalm, that's what that particular part of the passage, that's what that means. I make
Mm-hmm.
you get connected to me through nature. Which brings me
Yes.
to my particular spiritual belief, and my lineage that I believe in. I'm an Umbandista, which uh it came from Brazil. It started in Brazil. It's now spreading. It's relatively new. It's a school of mediumship, but at the core of it, it goes back to Africa and Ifa, West Africa, in Yoruba, right? So the spiritual practice is called Ifa, and it comes from Yoruba.
Mm-hmm.
And um, we believe in the Orishas, which some may call them deities, but they're
Mm-hmm.
forces of nature to those of us that believe in the practice. Forces of nature. They
And in
control
the same way,
every
we
single
call on
part of
all
nature,
of them.
right? Yes.
When we call on the elements, which one brings in fire, which one brings in thunder, which one represents the
Mhm.
water, which one is the ocean,
Sure.
and all of the cultures seem to have that in some way. And as you pointed out in this episode and in others, so when people we're both in the United States looking at Christianity, and people coming from other cultures, they brought their faith with them and brought it into Christianity, and infused um, Ifa or Yoruba or
Mhm.
Akan or whatever country they came from and whatever that traditional religion was for them into the spirituality that was presented to them. For most of us, Christianity. And
Yeah.
there are some
I love that
things.
you mentioned that. I love that
Mhm,
you mentioned that because in making that point, you're showing how religion, right, can be an anchor. It really, there's so many areas of cross section.
mhm, mhm,
And as long as you have respect for where
mhm,
someone else's faith lies, this is the way to um, have it be an anchor for you in your grief process versus it being a point of pain or contention or separation, right? Where you're saying, oh, I can't believe in what you believe in. Well, none of us should ask anyone else to believe in what we believe in. But what we should say is, I respect your process of belief
mhm.
in faith, right? I even
Yes,
those even those that are, that are agnostic or atheist deserve our respect,
absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
Because that's their way of having a relationship with a higher elemental energy.
And I think because you brought in agnostic and atheist, I think it's important because I can think of different people in my family over the journey that considered themselves atheist, but at one point my ex-husband was a political prisoner at one point, and he talked about how people would pray for them. And I was like, but you don't believe in prayers. And he goes, well, good vibes. I said, well, good vibes are prayers. Like, it's still really the same thing, sir. But okay,
That's right.
whatever you want to call it, and
That's right.
and it's the same. So
It's
when you
it's
said,
the same, and so language is a fickle thing, right? Like people really like to have ownership over their language and how they describe things, or how they utilize their language, and that, for me personally, that's absolutely fine. I
right,
have the ability to see the commonalities in it all. You know,
right,
my spiritual belief didn't just like fall out of nowhere. Like, it comes from, I come from a very long line of practitioners and believers of this particular lineage. But
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
my parents were both, well, my father was an atheist and my mother was an agnostic.
right, okay,
So as far as they're concerned, like my entire family was baptized. Well, I think I was baptized in Puerto Rico or something, like, but who knows, right? I heard I was baptized. But I never did my communion. I never did my confirmation. Like, I never did any of those Catholic steps because my parents just didn't, like, for them, it was like, nah. But everyone else around me did.
wow,
I didn't
wow,
fall into that category. So, when we take it back to the initial conversation for this subject matter, right? Like, we're grief will make us seek,
mm-hmm,
right? And I feel that in that search, many of us have been actually searching our whole lives,
yes, yes.
right?
But I also think sometimes the searching and the seeking stops even before grief, that there's faith, spirituality, there's sometimes pressure, there's sometimes a wound, there's sometimes these things, and we'll get into that in another episode. People that say, with the Bible in their hand, like, stay strong. God doesn't give you more than you can handle. You know, um, this is your cross to bear. And did that help you, Yvette? Did that help you?
I actually wanted to punch somebody in the face when they said it to me, but that's neither. I digress, sis, from the violence. But no, listen, like, what I also, on the flip side of that, was like, oh, you're so strong. Okay. I
What
mean,
am I,
I didn't feel it.
not at all. Not at all. What am I supposed to do with that? What am I supposed to do
Right.
with that?
What am I supposed to do with that? I mean, listen, I'm glad that it brings you comfort.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. But yes, you're right. Like, but I feel culturally and grief is now the grief process, or what people say when you're in grief, like it's not excluded from culturally. I believe that, oftentimes God, religion, spirituality is weaponized in a way where people say things, believe things that are convenient for them in their particular place in society, in the world.
Yeah.
And grief is not devoid of that.
I agree with you. And I think I'm curious what our listeners will say. I'm always so excited when we speak to see what we'll hear from them and when they communicate with us on social media, email or voice note, but like what was helpful to them. Because and I don't remember how it goes, but you'll remember it when I say it. If I bring up something that was a helpful thing that I heard that was a spiritual, or I don't think it's religious, you'll remember it, but the Footprints poem. When people talk about, you're walking, if you've never heard of this one, in terms of footprints, there's a visual in this long poem about someone walking and how challenging their life was. And they always saw there were two sets of footprints. And then in their lowest point in their life, when they were in despair, they only saw one set of footprints, and they were angry at God for having left them, for having forsaken them. Like, why would you leave me in those darkest times? And then God tells them, oh, now I have chills, that is when I carried you.
That's right.
And we'll be right back.
Welcome to Merrick Studios, where stories take the mic and culture comes alive.
We're not just a network, we're family, bringing you smart, soulful, unfiltered conversations.
And this season, we're bringing the heat with our biggest lineup yet. Whatever you're into, music, sports, business, we got you covered.
Merrick Studios, where the conversation starts and keeps going.
Check out our full lineup, including Unglossy with Bun B, Jeffrey Sledge, and myself, Tom Frank. Now streaming at wearemerrickstudios.com.
Master the art of lyricism with Pendulum Mink, the first school for rap. Learn elite techniques through immersive lessons, real-world exercises, and guidance from hip-hop icons. This is where MCs sharpen their skills and glow boldly on the mic. Ready to level up? Visit pendulummink.com and start your journey today.
And now, back to the show.
That is right. Yes. And I'm so glad that you brought that poem up, honestly, because we haven't touched on this yet, but this is something that's very real. I find this with many of my grief coaching clients, that they are angry with God, right?
Mm-hmm.
Angry. Like, how could you do this to me? Why would you do this to me? Why would you allow me to experience this level of pain? They damn God. Like, they could have been, Sunday churchgoers, or, whatever other denomination I'm speaking in terms of Christianity. But, and let something like losing a child, losing your spouse, losing your parent, let something like that happen, and that could very well go out the window.
Yeah. And you know this and I know this, but I'm just going to call it forth and say it, that in terms of looking at who we are, and people have talked about that since you mentioned New Age, where we are not only with spirituality, but even with gender. It's not either or. We have to expand beyond the binary. It's not as though it's you're being damned or something happened to you, that there is a blessing in it as well. There is joy, there is grief, there is good, there is bad, there is dark, there is light. And there's that combination, the black and the white, the dark and the light is the gray. There's this duality, and we have to pull back and encourage and guide and teach our clients and communities that it doesn't have to be either or, and give them permission to accept that. Like, this horrible thing happened, and we can think of this, and this is probably a really activating example, not the best example, but we know of people that gave birth to children. I had this conversation with someone in my life recently that found out in their adult life that their conception was not with permission, but they knew love from their mother and had an entire life with them. And So that is, to me, a supreme example of the good and the bad. That this person, and there are many that I'm sure that we know of, our listeners, that they have the loss of innocence, the loss of permission, but then they have this life and this beauty that was created from a heinous act.
I had a client whose mother was very, very ill, and she was the caretaker. And her mother was relatively young, right? And so was my client. And she was so angry. Not only that her mother was sick, but at this point in her life, when she wanted to be doing all these other things with her life, she had to be the caretaker for her mother, right? And there wasn't, funny enough, the resentment wasn't towards her mother being sick and dying. It was towards God, as if, as if it was a punishment.
Yeah.
And it was very, very difficult for her to get it out, like to not think in those terms.
Yeah. Yeah. And, but I feel like I'm about to go there, because we're also taught within religion that we're born in sin, and that, Jesus died on the cross for our sins. And so there are these things we do tend to think of, if bad things happen to bad people. And that's something that I had to repeatedly say to myself, and thinking of breaking that duality down, going, I am a good mother, and my daughter died by suicide. Like, her death by suicide, the trials that she lived through in her short amount of time, in her 15 years, were not a punishment to me or to her. Bad things can happen to good people. And moving past that, and looking at where we are as Black and brown people, what's going on in Puerto Rico, what's going on in the Virgin Islands, and the ownership of these islands, and what is damnation and what is blessing, and how do you reconcile those things beyond religion within your life, and how you live, and how you love.
Yeah. I have an opinion, and I just want to preface that. I have an opinion. As a psychic intuitive medium, my opinion is that if you, as the griever, stay in that place of anger and pain, you will not be able to receive the frequency that your loved one now exists in.
Wow.
Okay. And I'm going to tell you, and the folks out there, y'all could think I'm crazy. It's okay. Doesn't matter. But this was a moment for me that really got me through, especially the very, very early days. So I received a message from Jesus in my Christ consciousness that said, I am sending my mother to you.
Wow.
And I literally felt the aura of Mother Mary with me. And in my prayers and in my meditation, particularly in my meditative moments, she would come. I would spend hours at my altar, just praying, just trying to ground in, just seeking, this place where I can find some sort of peace. And she would sit next to me and she would talk to me. And she said, I know your pain. My son also died.
Wow.
And I'm here to help you. And I would say the Hail Mary over and over and over again in my prayers. And then I would sit quietly and listen for her. And when I tell you, Dee, had I been angry, had I been, in the depths of the darkest part of the pain, had I allowed myself to sit there, I would not have received the blessing that she came to shroud me with, because that's what it felt like. I felt her embrace. I felt her protection. I felt her staying with me every second. And so that's my opinion and my little story to kind of back that up. And, you know, folks out there can take it how they want, but I'm very curious to see, if you stayed in your faith, what were some of the messages, dreams, signs, you know, what were those things that came? Because I also had another client who was extreme. I'm talking rage angry.
Wow.
That their spouse was passing away, after their spouse passed away. And they would always say, God has forsaken me. God has not given me any messages. I can't see anything. I can't hear God. Where is God? God has left me.
Mm, mm, mm. And it's interesting. And I know you talked to me about giving people free advertisement, but I'm coming back to Pixar. I'm coming back to Inside Out and that whole dashboard of who's running your brain. And when anger would show up, if you haven't seen the film Inside Out or Inside Out 2, go see it. That's all I got. But in part 1, and even somewhat in part 2, anger was such a prime character. Anger was such a lead. And when I had my children watch that, and I asked my youngest son, I was like, well, who runs your dashboard? Oh, context. There's emotion that would run your dashboard. In the same way you have a car, you have a remote control, somebody would be managing your brain and your emotions. And so anger, when it runs the dashboard, it was red. It was a little kind of monster looking thing, kind of like a red SpongeBob with fire coming out of his head. And you can't see anything. So whether I believe or feel, I don't have that experience that you shared, Yvette, but what I see is, what makes sense to me is when that blinding red comes across, it blocks your view and your vision and your feel, because you don't have another emotion. But the same thing can happen with other emotions too. There's an excessive amount, and it shows that in Inside Out in your dashboard that you need the joy, the sadness, the fear, because that'll protect you, a little anxiety, a little anger. You need a little bit of all of it. But if you get stuck in one, it blinds you from all the blessings and the messages and things that are happening. So that's what I hear in the story that you told me. And I look forward to hearing what our listeners and knowing what signs or confirmations that they've seen that have brought them comfort. Like, I know of people telling me stories of my daughter visiting them, or dreams they've had with my daughter. Or one person told me about how she knew that someone had died, and from something she saw in nature with a little bird struggling, until it died. And then she came home and got the news that my daughter had died. And she was like crumbled and reflected on what the signs she had seen on her journey home that confused her. So I think we all get those messages, and some people see them, some people dismiss them, make excuses for them. But I think we all have that gift. And I do think, to your point, and bringing us to the rituals we've talked about, with the lighting of a candle, sitting in nature, right? And something we talked about in a previous episode because of your sunroom is gardening. You can be an atheist or an agnostic, but if you can take the thing, talking about the faith of a mustard seed, if you can take a seed and put it in some dirt and watch something bloom, blossom, and grow, that is a miracle.
Mm. Huh. Huh. It sure is. It sure is.
And one of my godson, I was talking to him the other day, and he said he lost his mother last year. And in us talking about that, and how his gardening has been something that has been really soothing for him. And I'm like, he's over 30, he's almost 40. And I'm like, you're gardening? Yeah. Like, that is a spiritual act. It's not a religious act.
No, it is not.
But it is a spiritual act.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I love that you made that point. That's such an important point to make. You don't need to be, well, what you said was, if you're agnostic or if you're atheist, you can still do something that connects you to nature. This is what I heard. You can still do something, you can still do a ritual that grounds you and connects you to nature, whether or not you believe that nature is connected to God.
Yes.
The energy of it all is what's going to feed you, soothe you, and comfort you during your grief process.
Ashe.
Yeah. I love
Because
them.
my big things that happen today, I keep a white candle lit quite often. But even for this particular thing, because I feel as though the recording and the sharing, what we're doing in this process, you and I together, in sharing these stories and talking to each other and the listeners is a grounding, healing process for me. So I do light a candle. I do light incense. I have a plant. There's certain things that I like to position myself in, like I'm inviting these elements. So with my candle, there's fire, there's a glass of water, there's a plant, so there's nature. So there's all these elements that I'm bringing into this experience that we share together in presencing. And I invite my clients, my friends, my family, like to be a part of this and to acknowledge you, Yvette, me, Dionne, to the listeners at home and wherever they are, that they are elements and forces of nature. So when they can tap in and tune into the nature around them, that invites a corporal, a body experience, an embodied experience that can carry them through whatever they're going through.
Can I ask you what's probably going to be a very difficult question?
Okay. All right. Taking a breath.
So, how does a mother of a daughter who died by suicide, how do you discern? What's your discernment of God in those moments? How do you discern from the violent nature
Mm.
of the transition out,
Mm-hmm.
right, with the beauty that your daughter was when she was here?
Hmm. Oof. You said it was going to be a difficult question. You ain't lie. You ain't lie. So many thoughts went through my head as you were saying it. I was really glad that I used nature. So I was grounding myself by holding on to my desk, this wooden solid block of wood, connecting to nature to ground me as you said that. And the short answer is I don't know, and I don't know if I do. I think my spiritual belief is that my daughter had finished her work. I also do believe and know that there were various mental health challenges that were going on with her, lots of things that weren't mitigated in terms of how do you process being a victim of sexual violence? How do you process depression and anxiety? How do you process premenstrual dysphoric disorder? Like all these diagnoses I can go through. Now she might have been considered bipolar. So there's so many things that were going on. And in this beautiful brain and understanding those of us that are considered to be neurodivergent versus neurotypical, we process things differently. So I don't see there as fault, but I don't know that I've ever thought about it. I simply moved to, in my innocence, and how I often say I'm like a 6, 7-year-old, the way I process the world, because it makes it easier for me. I'm just like, she did the best she could with what life had dealt her, and that seemed like the only thing she could do. I absolutely wish it didn't happen, that we could have gotten her some more support, that she could have gotten past that hurdle. But I still see the beauty of all that she did in her 15 years. And I don't sit with the how she died. I really focus more on the reconciliation of I was so blessed to have given birth to this spirit that has guided and continues to guide my purpose and what I do for mental health advocacy and suicide prevention and fostering real conversations around the pain that happens with people, whether it's sexual violence or mental health challenges and diagnoses. So you can get to some reconciliation of peace and acceptance with life or death, whatever the end is. I don't even know if I answered your question.
You did, because what I heard was her time here was done.
Mm.
That's you connecting with your God, and your God, like I believe that we all come in with a contract, right? And our lives are predestined. However, we do have free choice along the way. And so Siwe,
Mm-hmm.
she decided how she wanted to go.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And not locking into the how
Mm-hmm.
allows you to see the beauty that she was.
Yes. Yes.
Spiritually, physically, emotionally, all the things. However troubled, you're able to stay in grace for you're able to stay in grace despite.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think that you answered it beautifully.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I want to say, for our listeners, I want to share something that you and I know, but that maybe they're struggling with.
Okay.
And I want to say, our lived experience brings us back to faith.
Mm-hmm.
However difficult it is to step into that. If it makes you feel comforted, safe, loved, supported, then it's of God and it's of faith. No matter the name, no matter the process, no matter religion or spirituality. If you're remaining in an emotional state that is painful, that is gut-wrenching, that is heart-wrenching, and please understand that I said remain, because we all feel these things.
Absolutely.
But if you remain in that place, then you are out of balance or out of faith or out of, sometimes even out of body.
Yeah.
Right? Where the tethering
Right.
will come
And
loose.
I'm going to stop you right there, because I literally wanted to bring in the body and some things we talk about, since you and I are such embodied practitioners.
Look how
And
we segue to each
yeah,
other. Like, hello, go.
yeah. Bring in the body, because we talked about the rituals that ground us. And these rituals, I would say, are spiritual rituals that are not grounded in any particular religion, but we have consistently, and we will close the episode again with this, calling their names, speaking their names out loud, setting a place at the table, creating these legacy projects and things that we do in their honor. The fact that I advocate, like I actually will advocate for mental health education and suicide prevention in schools, to make laws and doing these things in their honor, to bring their names forward, walking in Out of the Darkness suicide prevention walks. These are things that I do. But some people, I know a sister in Georgia, in Douglasville, she planted this beautiful garden and created a labyrinth in her son's honor. So when I met her, to be able to walk this labyrinth and experience this peace and have their name up, having a bench. I know Dasan has a bench,
He
having
does.
this. So when someone sits on the bench, so I have not sat on Dasan's bench, but in
We're gonna
Martha's,
go.
sitting on an elder's bench that is in honor of their loved one. It was her husband and her son that died at separate times. So there's so many things that ground you and actions that you take that keep your loved ones with you. But before we close out, I just want to ask if you feel complete. We've given them so much to think about. I really am excited to hear what they say and what they'll reach out to us with, what their thoughts are. And do we want to give them a teaser about next time, or do we just want to go to our Ashe moment? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I think I want to go into Ashe at this point. I feel that I gave my 2 cents about the importance of faith.
Yes.
I don't want to, have anyone feel like they're beholden to any one particular process. But if you believe in something, even if it's the blade of grass, even if it is the mustard seed, that's all it takes.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
it is a portal to healing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So with the Ashe moments, for the new people that are joining us, we love to call in the names of the people that have transitioned. And what I did not say is that was what I started with today that shook my world. Is I went to a store in my neighborhood and I found out that one of my neighbors passed, and he was the owner of a health food store. So the names, if you have names, please share them with us. We're going to share a name from one listener, but you can place a hand on your heart and your belly. I do that because I feel like it grounds me and connects me to myself. So the names that I will share that are not from my family this time are from our listener, Ellie, Sean Jackson, her father, and my dear neighbor and business owner, Joel Nar, that died just about a week ago. And I just found out today and it broke my heart. And of course, always calling in my daughter, Siwe. And I will pass it over to you, Evie.
So we're talking about neighbors, and I want to call the name of Vicky and Dominic Healy. You know, I've had many mothers that have stepped in the absence of my own. And Vicky Healy became like a mother to me. And I lost her, and it still hurts. So she was not only a neighbor, but she was a mother figure. And so I want to call her name. And her husband literally died of a broken heart weeks after she passed away. And they were together for over 50 years and just the most beautiful people. So Vicky and Dominic Healy. And I had 2 miscarriages. I wanted another child after Eva, but it just wasn't in the cards for me. And although I never gave those 2 beautiful souls names, I want to acknowledge that they came in for me. I want to acknowledge those 2 souls and thank you for choosing me even though you couldn't stay.
Ashe, Ashe. Whew. Take a breath, girl. What a journey.
What a journey.
What a journey. Well, I am thankful to you, Evie, for this journey with you as always. It is healing for my heart, my mind, my soul, and my body. And I hope that we hear from you, our listeners, and letting us know what you took away from this and give us the names of your loved ones so we can continue to share them. And we look forward to seeing you next time.
Ashe.
Ashe. I love you, Evie.
I love you more, sis.
We'd love for you to join the conversation with us on Instagram at 2, that's the number 2, mothers, 1, the number 1, Ashe Pod. And produced and distributed by Merrick Studios.
Until next time, may love carry you through.